Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Idea Gen Global Podcast with George Sifakis.
I'm George Sifakis. In a world overflowing with noise, there is one forum where the world's smartest voices connect, where visionaries sit at the same table as innovators, and great minds don't just talk, they act.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
Looking for the perfect gift? Blink has you covered. With a Blink security camera, you're giving the gift of peace of mind.
A camera? Isn't that hard for them to set up?
It's simple to install anywhere, and they'll always know what's happening at home.
Okay, that's actually perfect.
Perfect indeed. Give the gift of smart security with Blink so they can check in on home from anywhere this holiday season. Shop now at Amazon.com/Blink.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. I have just returned from Washington, D.C. I'm glad to be back with you. I attended the White House Christmas party on Monday night. It was a stunning affair. This is the 16th Christmas party that the president has attended and spoken at, something he joked about. But Robert F. Kennedy, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, was there. The FBI Director Kash Patel was there. CIA Director John Radcliffe was in the House. Attorney General Pam Bondi, Governor Sarah Sanders, and many other great patriots. You don't really have time to eat, but the food is spectacular. And the president is, as always, very freewheeling in his comments. He specifically singled out and lauded his longtime pollster and strategist Tony Fabrizio and the field general of his campaign, political consultant Chris LaCivita, of course, joking about how overly expensive both of them are. But it was a great evening. I probably drank a little more champagne than I should have. They kept filling my glass, and then I went from there to the Occidental restaurant for dinner, where unfortunately I had one martini, and I had a great time, but I lost one of my favorite scarves. That was an Alan Fletcher scarf that I bought in the 90s. The only thing I like about traveling in Washington, D.C. or New York City is that I get to wear my extensive winter wardrobe. Otherwise, in Florida, not only is all this stuff too heavy, but frankly, in Washington, nobody ever wears a suit, never mind a tie. I stayed at the Willard Hotel. The Willard Hotel is very significant to me. It's where I married my wife of, I guess, 39 years now, or 34 years, pardon me, Nydia Bertrand de Espinosa Stone. It is also, interesting enough, the Willard Hotel was, they call it the home of presidents. It's where the term lobbyist came from. You see, when Ulysses S. Grant was living there during the time that they were renovating the White House, special interests who wanted to buttonhole him would sit in the lobby, waiting for the president to come down so they could, approach him about their special pleadings. So it was President Grant who first called them lobbyists, and they're extremely powerful in Washington, D.C. Every major foreign country has them. Every major corporation has them. They give very heavily to candidates, both Republicans and Democrats, and of course they also have, many of them, the revolving door of having been in government or returning back to government. The Willard Hotel, interestingly enough, was closed in July of 1968 and was then rented by Richard Nixon's presidential campaign. Rented essentially the entire hotel for the general election phase of the presidential election. Nixon's comeback was actually headquartered out of New York City, so it established post-convention a Nixon presence in Washington, D.C., and I worked in that building with Pat Buchanan and Ken Kachigian and Mort Lyndon Allen, and of course under the leadership of John Mitchell, the Attorney General, who would later go to prison for Watergate, maintaining till his death that he never approved any break-in at the Watergate, something that was sworn to by one of the other individuals in the Watergate case, who confirmed all of that. So it's a great place to stay, and I had an extraordinarily good time. The president, I must tell you, is in great spirits. It was Fred LaRue. That's who I was trying to think of, who who also went to prison on Watergate, also said that he was present at all the meetings, and John Mitchell, the Attorney General, never approved the Watergate break-in either. Of course, did Richard Nixon. Now, this week, documents that have been released by the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley demonstrate the outrageous overreach and the illegality of the raid on President Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, just the idea of the raid on a former president's home is outrageous enough. I, of course, could identify with the president because of the 6 a.m. raid at my home. Just as they went through Melania's underwear drawer, they also went through my wife's underwear drawer. They also trashed my house. They were there for 13 hours. They set up these enormous trucks and tables outside. They went through every square inch of my house. They also raided my nearby studio. And they took all my electronics, of course. They took a bunch of discs that had nothing on them. But there are three things that are missing to this day. I had written an entire book, teaming with St. John Hunt, on what we believe we could make a case was the murder of John F. Kennedy Jr. That manuscript, which was just about done, was both in the hard drive of my computer, and there was a galley I was working to complete it. That has disappeared in the raid and has never been returned to me. Secondarily, there is my file of correspondence between me and Mo Howard of the Three Stooges. Mo, I read as a younger man living in Washington, was living in New Jersey, was in retirement. I began a very lively correspondence with Mo Howard, who explained to me the entire history of the Three Stooges. Initially, of course, they included two brothers, Curly Jerry Howard, Curly of the Three Stooges, Mo Howard, and Larry Fine. Then, of course, after Curly died of a heart attack, Curly was a hard-drinking, hard-partying ladies' man and a gambler, based on what Mo told me. He would be replaced by yet another brother, Shemp Howard, who was already a comedic actor. He appears in The Bank Dick with W.C. Fields, where he plays the bartender. So I had this entire extensive history of the Three Stooges, including after the death of Curly, he is replaced first by Shemp Howard, then he's replaced by Curly Joe Dorita. He's briefly replaced by Joe Besson, who was a comic actor who played Stinky on Abbott and Costello, but he didn't last very long, finally to be replaced by Curly Joe Dorita, who was a burlesque comedian who then went on to make several feature films with the Stooges. So I really prize my personal handwritten correspondence with Mo Howard, but it is among the items the FBI took and they never returned. And then lastly was the very extensive file of correspondence with former President Richard Nixon, including the originals of the memos that Nixon wrote to Reagan, advising him throughout the 1980 presidential campaign. Ken Kachigian, who's written a great book, I think it's in the room, but a terrific book on Nixon and Reagan, speaks extensively about that backstage role. Now, fortunately for me, I copied all of this, and I have copies of all of that correspondence. But again, the original taken by the FBI, not listed in the list of items they're required to give my lawyers and never returned to me, but they have literally disappeared. We now know, based on the revelations this week, the FBI's Washington field office repeatedly stated that it did not believe it had established any probable cause to justify a search warrant on Donald Trump's home. The entire government narrative put forward by Jack Smith that Donald Trump was in possession of classified documents that he was not entitled to have. It was basically false under the Presidential Records Act. Under the Presidential Records Act, a sitting president can have whatever federal documents he wants. And in fact, this was tested because Bill Clinton was sued and charged because he had held on to presidential records, and Judge Amy Berman Jackson, the liberal Democrat judge who presided over my trial and the trial of Paul Manafort, ruled that Bill Clinton could do anything with his documents he wants, including using him having them in his sock drawer in Chappaqua. So this was a larger part of the entire Jack Smith escapade, including Arctic Force, which is an unprecedented plan to spy on and surveil and set up and frame American citizens who just happen to be supporters or friends or staff members or outspoken supporters of Donald Trump or active conservatives, including organizations and people. This is including surveillance on U.S. senators and others. This is extra constitutional. It's also very clear now that the investigation into the Clinton Foundation was a fraud. But in these new revelations, emails show that agents were questioning why the draft after draft of the warrant on Mar-a-Lago was being circulated, despite investigators obtaining no new information, not understanding what the point would be. Documents also reveal that the Biden DOJ was determined, due to their political agenda, to act quickly regardless of the FBI's concerns. So officials discussed having a search warrant ready by early 2022 and made it clear there would be no negotiation with Trump's attorneys, even as the FBI raised logistical and evidentiary objections. Then on August 8th, of course, Americans woke up to the stunning news that FBI agents had raided Mar-a-Lago. The president, of course, was not home at the time. Once again, I believe the purpose of this raid was to obtain the documents that were later declassified by Tulsi Gabbard, the documents that show that this was a seditious conspiracy that began in April of 2016 in that fateful meeting that included Barack Obama, Joe Biden, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, FBI Director James Comey, CIA Director John Brennan, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and of course, National Security Actor Director of Intelligence James Clapper. Clapper very clearly is caught denying that he believed the Steele dossier was true. But what we now know definitively, and this was shocking because we learned it last week, was that CIA Director Gina Haspel, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and National Security Advisor John Bolton, all working at the time for Donald Trump, were all told that the Steele dossier, which provided the underlying premise for the investigation into Donald Trump, the intelligence community assessment put together by Brennan based on two fabricated points. One, that the Steele dossier, that's the memo that claimed that Donald Trump had dallied with Russian prostitutes while visiting Russia as a private citizen, and therefore, they argued, susceptible to blackmail, or the claim, which is entirely false, that Russian intelligence conducted an online hack of the Democrat National Committee, and that information about the DNC and Hillary's campaign, which was ultimately published by WikiLeaks, was provided by the Russians, for which there is no forensic evidence or proof. That is a claim. That's a claim by John Brennan, the CIA director. The entire town is, of course, rocked by these two stories in Vanity Fair about Susie Wiles and what all of that means. I can tell you that I've known Susie Wiles for over 30 years. I think she does an excellent job for the president. Part of having that job is taking the blame for stuff that you had nothing to do with. Donald Trump is his own man. He's not managed. He's not handled. He's not controlled. He's not scripted. So what you see is what you get. And right now, I would hate to be Maduro in Venezuela. I would hate to be him, because the president is determined to end the Marxist narco drug trafficking in the United States that begins in Venezuela, roots its way through Honduras, with the assistance of both the Chinese and the Cubans, only to kill people here in America. That's what this effort to remove Maduro is about. It's not about regime change. It is about ending this narco threat to America. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Don't go anywhere. Keep listening because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Well, if you love Christmas carols, if you love the season, I've got great news for you. Coming December 20th, it's Home for the Holidays with Mr. Christmas himself, Vinny Madunio, from right here on 77 WABC, live in concert at the Studio 77 in the heart of New York City. I mean, this is an incredible performance by a very dynamic and entertaining individual who's a colleague of mine here. So get ready to slay your night away with live performances. Wear your ugliest Christmas sweaters, of course, and see a lot of your jolly friends. Once again, Mr. Christmas, Vinny Madunio, singing all of your holiday favorites live in concert December 20th at the WABC studios in the heart of New York City. For more information and tickets, go to homefortheholidays2025.com. That is homefortheholidays2025.com. Once again, it's Vinny Madunio live in concert, singing all your Christmas favorites right there at the WABC headquarters at Studio 77. Once again, to get your tickets, go to homefortheholidays2025.com. Shocking news late last week. I've never seen this before, but a federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia actually ordered the Department of Justice to return the evidence that absolutely proves that James Comey did lie under oath when he told the Congress under oath that he had never supplied classified documents to anyone and instructed them to leak. And the emails in which he does exactly that with his close friend Daniel Richman, for which he has not been prosecuted based on a technicality, the court actually returned that to Mr. Richman, saying it was a violation of his Fourth Amendment rights. I don't think so. They had probable cause and they have the absolute right to investigate Mr. Richman. I have really never seen somebody who sues to get the evidence of their criminal act back from the DOJ and succeeds. But we have seen it now. And Letitia James continues to flaunt the fact that a federal prosecution against her seems to have failed in 2 grand juries, but I still think there is an active case looking into a case of bribery, perhaps even tax evasion, into Letitia James. So the idea that mortgage fraud is her only crime would be incorrect. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Into the Stone Zone. Well, all of Washington is buzzing about the 2-part series in Vanity Fair, which quotes Susie Wiles extensively. Now, full disclosure, I have been a longtime friend and colleague, as well as an admirer of President Trump's first woman chief of staff in history, Susie Wiles. She's an enormously capable, low-key, and effective operative. Many during the 2024 election criticized her campaign strategy and operations, but she's a winner. And this idea that she's some kind of deep state insider just doesn't match with history. I first met her in Ronald Reagan's campaign when Reagan was challenging the deep state candidate George H.W. Bush. She and I worked together for Ronald Reagan. Then in 1988, when she could have yet again worked for George H.W. Bush, the epitome of the deep state, Mr. New World Order himself, she instead chose to work with upstate New York Congressman Jack Kemp, who was the logical heir to Reaganism. Then she managed the outsider campaign of Senator Rick Scott, a businessman, non-politician who came out of nowhere to defeat the favorite, Attorney General Bill McCollum of Florida, and go on to win the U.S. Senate seat, and then go on to become governor of Florida. After Ron DeSantis won the 2018 primary in an upset based completely and totally on the Trump endorsement, because DeSantis was having trouble getting traction or raising money. He was running far behind the Agriculture Commissioner, Adam Putnam, who was endorsed by every Republican county chairman, every Republican member of the state Senate, every Republican member of the state House, the Senate president, the all-powerful Speaker of the House, every Republican member of the congressional delegation, with the exception of Matt Gaetz, had all endorsed Adam Putnam. But Matt Gaetz, in the end, persuaded President Trump to support Ron DeSantis, which would, of course, later be repaid with a stunning act of treachery when he turned on the man who made him politically and ran for president. But it was at that point that President Trump told DeSantis to take Susie Wiles into his campaign, because his nomination was a phenomena by Fox Television and conservative radio, but he really had no organization on the ground, and he found himself in a very, very close race with Andrew Gillum, the mayor of Tallahassee, who would later go down in a drug and sex scandal. Gillum was like Obama, very charismatic, very well spoken. And because he had been a mayor, he well understood state issues. Ron DeSantis had spent his time in Washington and didn't know much about state issues, and therefore was basically faking it. I watched those two debates, and I know at the time everybody claimed DeSantis had held his own. I think he lost both of them. In any event, Susie Wiles is the one who saved that candidacy, put together a general election campaign, and Ron DeSantis, in the end, won by 25,000 out of 8.9 million votes cast. So for those who say Susie Wiles is affiliated with the World Economic Forum, that is false. Susie Wiles was a lobbyist for Big Pharma and Pfizer, categorically false. Susie Wiles worked as an employee for a company called Mercury. She was not a shareholder in equity company. But I think, as most people know, after that long string of victories, DeSantis turned on her. She was fired from her job with DeSantis's PAC, fired from her contract with the Florida State Republican Committee, fired from President Trump's reelection campaign, and fired from her lobbying job, which was then with Ballard and Associates, and she moved over to Mercury. She handled no pharmaceutical clients. In fact, most of her clients were Jacksonville-based, defense-oriented and transportation clients. So a false narrative gets written here. I think she and the president have an undeniable rapport. He recently called her Susie Trump in a show of deep reference to her. So it should really come as no surprise that the fake news media is now trying to drive a wedge between President Trump and Susie Wiles. The White House gave access to Vanity Fair, and surprise, Vanity Fair is now twisting, and I think in many cases, distorting what Susie Wiles actually said, pulling quotes out of context to create the appearance that she attacked President Trump, Vice President Vance, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and others. Susie Wiles herself responded to this hit piece in an extensive post on X, saying significant context was disregarded, and much of what I said and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelming, chaotic, and negative narrative about the president and her team. The truth is, the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years, and that is, in fact, due to the unmatched leadership and vision of Donald Trump, for whom, Susie says, she has been honored to work for the better part of a decade. None of this will stop our relentless pursuit of making America great. So for those on the right who are critics of Susie Wiles, please understand the historic alliance with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would never have happened but for Susie Wiles, who saw the importance of it and negotiated the current investigation into the legitimacy and the security of electronic voting machines that's being conducted by Tulsi Gabbard and being ably assisted by others, is authorized by Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles has been someone who brought order out of chaos. Donald Trump he's not handled, not managed, as I said earlier, and working for him means you have to understand him. You need to know when to push, when not to, but I think she has always acted in the president's best interests. So it's not a good idea to give hacks at Vanity Fair such access to the administration. That does surprise me. On the other hand, we've seen these kind of hit jobs. Again, this was a hit job. I personally think she's doing an excellent job. Donald Trump is not some cookie-cutter, blow-dry, scripted politician. He is a tough customer who does things his way. And Susie Wiles has excelled at trying to carry out his instructions for the best of her ability. I also think she's one of the primary reasons why we have winners in this cabinet like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Tulsi Gabbard, Treasury Secretary Scott Bennett, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has turned out to be one of the stars of this cabinet. I don't know if this is a concerted effort to try to undermine Susie Wiles' effort, but she does a superb job. I was very glad to see Donald Trump Jr. very strongly post in support of Susie Wiles. I noticed that virtually every cabinet officer did so. She did allegedly say that the head of the Office of Management Budget, Russ Vought, who's a friend of mine, is a right-wing zealot. I agree with that. That makes two of us. He is passionate about cutting waste and fraud and excess wasteful spending from the federal government, as well as he's committed to low taxes. This is a typical kind of Washington-based phenomenon, which the New York Times was first out. Now CNN is taking stories out of these two Vanity Fair stories, and taking them out of context or making them say things that were not said or were said differently. Now, the one area where I must disagree respectfully with Susie Wiles when she says that Bill Clinton was never on Epstein's island, the president is incorrect about that, President Trump. Actually, that is incorrect. If you look at my book, The Clintons' War on Women, published in 2015, in which I have the official FAA manifest that shows you who was on Epstein's plane and who traveled to the island. And if you would read the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of the Epstein witnesses who refused a multi-million-dollar settlement, there's no question that Bill Clinton traveled to Epstein's island on at least, based on the sworn testimony, at least, and the FAA records, at least 3 occasions. But it is also indisputable that he was on Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express, at least 27 times. In fact, he took Epstein's plane with Jeffrey Epstein to go meet the Sultan of Brunei to pick up a multi-million-dollar check for the Clinton Foundation. The Sultan and his brother, of course, are infamous pedophiles who keep harems of underage girls. So that is the one thing that Susie Wong is incorrect about. On the other hand, I'm going to send her my book for Christmas. This is a distraction, but we are clearly ratcheting up the pressure on Maduro. I think it's very important that people understand that unlike other previous foreign adventures, this is not about regime change, even though he is a communist thorn in our sides. This is really about the epic state of Marxist narco trafficking. People need to understand Venezuela is not a government. It is now a mafia cartel-run entity in which the authority of government is used to push the agenda and to protect the trafficking of people who are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. They are aided and abetted in this by certain elements in Honduras. I'm going to expose all of that extraordinarily soon. They are aided and abetted by the Cuban state, the most brutal regime perhaps in American history, other than perhaps the communist Chinese. They are aided by the Chinese as well as the Russians. We all read that Vladimir Putin called Maduro and told him not to worry about being attacked by the United States, that the Russians have his back. But again, this is not about endless foreign war. It's not about groups on the ground. It's not a war like the war on Iraq, in which our inherent national interests were never true. I mean, as you may remember, Vice President Dick Cheney and his right-hand man, Bill Kristol, told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They forced Colin Powell to testify falsely that the Iranians had yellow cake uranium with which to make nuclear weapons. And lastly, they kept insisting falsely that the Iranians were deeply involved in the plot and conspiracy to attack America on 9/11, which of course is untrue because all of the hijackers were Saudis, and 4 of those Saudis had their visas to come to the United States signed by CIA Director John Brennan when he was the CIA station chief in Riyadh. So that's the kind of endless foreign war that I really think was designed to make millions of dollars for defense contractors. So Dick Cheney, prior to his being vice president, was the head of the Halliburton contract, a multi-million-dollar construction and defense contractor. When he becomes vice president, he puts his stock in a blind trust. But if he knows the stock is in the trust, how blind can the trust be? And the blind trust made literally billions of dollars for Halliburton and hundreds of millions of dollars for Dick Cheney. The American people did not vote in 2024 for more endless foreign wars like Afghanistan, like Syria, like Iraq. Donald Trump is the peace president. But the fight over Venezuela is not about war and peace. It's about ending the flood of lethal drugs that are flowing into our country. And on this, President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have stood extraordinarily strong. We need to see what happens in Honduras. The Nationalist Party very clearly ran the gambit in which Vice President Nasrallah breaks with the leftist Marxist Libre Party, runs as essentially a third-party candidate, as a candidate of the Liberal Party, in an effort to siphon votes from the nationalist, anti-Marxist trafficking party Libre, and the nationalist candidate won. Now the left is talking about a coup, even though they got 19% of the vote and they ran dead last. Who was it who signed a drug criminal extradition treaty with the United States? That would be President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Who was it who repealed that law? That would be Xiomara Castro, the current Marxist leader. This is why they framed Hernandez, as I have explained substantially both here in the Stone Zone and in print, in an effort to get him out of the way when the only witnesses against him were convicted murderers and the very drug traffickers that he extradited to the United States for their trials and convictions. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to The Zone. Do you remember Uranium One? Uranium One was a big expose, actually first published by the New York Times of all people. It was the 2010 deal that allowed Russia to seize control over significant, even perhaps controlling uranium assets to the United States while Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. This is a massive scandal because it's very clear that the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative got millions of dollars in return for this. And it was FBI Director Mueller who actually took the uranium specimens to Russia to be examined before the deal was done. Robert Mueller. The newly released FBI documents show that a criminal inquiry into the Clintons, not pertaining just to this transaction, but the entire epic mosaic of corruption and pay for play at the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative, was stonewalled by our FBI. Chairman Chuck Grassley, the longest-serving member of the Senate, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, revealed that FBI agents believed there was enough evidence to pursue a full investigation into Uranium One's transaction and its ties to the Clinton Foundation. But that investigation was killed, not because the agents lacked evidence, but because of internal delays and obvious resistance at the senior levels of the Justice Department. And the FBI quietly allowed the statute of limitations on this epic crime to expire. You may remember, but the center of this controversy was the sale of Uranium One, which was a Canadian mining company that was had vast U.S. uranium holdings, to Russia's state-owned nuclear firm Rosatom. During that same period, individuals connected to the deal donated millions to the Clinton Foundation. Bill Clinton was actually paid $500,000 for a speech in Moscow by a Kremlin-linked bank, which was promoting the Uranium One stock. So despite the overwhelming amount of evidence, senior DOJ officials like Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates and former FBI Director Andrew McCabe pushed hard to bury the case. The records reveal collapsing morale among agents and professionals who felt their authority was being undermined, and key witnesses were being left unexamined on the orders of Justice Department officials who were involved in approving the deal. And they wanted no examination of the deal. As a result of this cover-up, the United States remains vulnerable today. Russia supplied roughly 20% of America's enriched uranium as recently as last year, a dependency Congress is now scrambling to unwind. This is why these deep state criminals must be brought to justice, in my opinion. We have no time to waste. As President Trump leaves, there's a major chance we will go back to the same corrupt status quo unless ultimately those who broke the law, violated the Constitution, in this massive fraud of lawfare against President Donald Trump, as well as these venal corruption deals by Bill and Hillary Clinton, the American people expect justice. No, I'm sorry. It's not about retribution and revenge. It's not motivated by retribution as revenge. It's driven by a desire for accountability and justice. We must have one set of laws for both Republicans and Democrats. Not reasonable that James Comey and I are charged with the same crime, but he's allowed to leisurely turn himself in when I have 29 heavily armed FBI agents with a CNN camera in tow raiding my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, brandishing fully automatic assault weapons. We should have one standard, not two. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
This is Roger Stone. The holidays are here, and it's the time of year when travel, crowds, and cold weather mean one thing. Everybody's getting sick. And in moments like this, you don't want to rely on the bureaucracy, the nonsense, or the slow-moving medical machine. You want control. You want to be prepared. You want options. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that actually puts you in charge of your health. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone, place your order online, and a licensed physician reviews it. Once approved, your medication ships directly to your doorstep. Fast, private, and secure. So whether you're looking for ivermectin, antibiotics, or everyday maintenance medications, All Family Pharmacy now has you covered. No waiting rooms, no runaround, no interference. This holiday season, don't gamble with your health or your family's health. Stay prepared, stay protected, stay in control. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/stone and now save 10% with code STONE10. Take charge of your health because nobody cares about your freedom more than you do.